Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes podcast. Today we're here with Tyler Dow, who is the co-founder and CEO of WETx, and Jesse Empey, who is the CTO and co-founder of WETx. How are you guys?
Hey, great. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks for joining. I'm excited about this one because we're going to be talking about water and the importance of it, probably right behind air. Right? So let's just jump in with kind of the founding story of WETx. Where did the idea come from, and what problems are you guys solving?
Great. So my background is law and land and water development. Most of the time people hear land development, they have a fairly good idea of what that is. Water development's a little more confusing. Just like you can change the use of land from raw land to an industrial or commercial use, you can do the same thing with water. And a lot of my legal career was spent helping folks navigate through those waters, puns intended, right? So both municipalities as well as private owners working through those issues. I was sitting in a blockchain conference that was put on by BYU's law school and their MBA program. And this rabbit hole just kind of opened up and sucked me through, where I started thinking about the promise of blockchain to make transactions different. And water transactions are notoriously opaque and difficult to navigate. And one of the things you'll see in talking about water are the number of conversation points that we talk about, like flooding the market or navigating. Already in our conversation today, water is so integral. It's so important to life. It's everywhere. And as I sat in that conference, I realized that blockchain had some inherent tools, transparency, immutability, that made sense to marry with water. The presenters that day included some folks that ultimately led me to meet up and join with Jesse, who's here with us today as our CTO, another co-founder, Eric Vogler. And the three of us recognized the problems associated with water and buying and selling water, getting loans against water as an asset for cities, agriculture, and just kind of the idea that people in our generation and younger are less familiar with water than their grandparents were. And we wanted to take that institutional or intergenerational knowledge and put it in a magic black box so that people could actually be better stewards of the water. The idea being that we want to have the ability to really manage and understand water better, and blockchain and the tools associated with the distributed ledger would help us do that. And so Jesse's background is probably good for us to get into a little bit, and why it is that he was such an important first part of our team. And I'm just really grateful for him and for Eric, and willing to listen to a water dirt guy say to them, hey, I think there's a technology play here.
Gotcha.
So yeah, Tyler calls it a magic black box, but it's just software to people that understand just the software industry. We're just trying to understand the nuances of water and be able to take that and provide a solution for individuals that will be able to use that software easily to manage that water better than they have. And that's our goal, is to provide more of an abundance of water by just managing it better, rather than letting it evaporate or run down the field that it's needed. So that's what we're after.
Yeah. And I'll be in the magic black box category because I'm not very technical. But I can imagine what problems you guys are trying to solve, because when you're talking to a cowboy or a rancher or a developer, anywhere in the world, really, that'll come up almost immediately. Water rights. And is there water? How much? Accessibility. And then there's many, many thousands, if not millions, of disputes about water. Whose is that? why? And why did you not like flip the switch on the canal 2 days earlier? Because that was supposed to be my water rights. Like, you guys know this better than anyone, right? And it's like old. Like my grandpa said this, or it's like in some municipal city archive, and you've got to like dig it up. So blockchain would be a great application to alleviate some of these problems, correct?
Yeah, it's cool that you think it's obvious. I know you have a little bit of background, or maybe a lot of background in ag and ag water. 80% of the water in the western United States, that's a round number, is owned by an agricultural user, right? And by owned, I mean has the right to use. Water's a weird asset class. Most of the time, people think of ownership as, like their home, or maybe an oil lease that they have. And an oil lease is a better analogy for water than probably your home ownership.
Yeah.
It's a right to use. In the western United States, and in fact, much of the world, water is owned by the sovereign, so by the state. The state of Utah owns the water. And it grants use rights or water rights. And those water rights sometimes are put into shares of ownership inside of an irrigation company. So an irrigation or canal company will own those rights that are a license, in essence, from the state. And everywhere in the world that we're working, from Australia, here in the Mountain West, California, South Africa, have similar concepts associated with water. The sovereign owns the water. And it makes some sense, right? Because it's that important to life. And then it grants use licenses. Those use licenses are what we call paper or dry rights, don't often match up with actual use. And that's because of the variable aspect of water. It comes at different times. Sometimes we have floods, sometimes we have droughts. And matching those use rights up with the actual wet water have been difficult for people to do since the concepts of having a use right were really born 150 years ago. And so a distributed ledger is good at showing everybody at the same time who owns what, and having that transparency of ownership was one of the obvious advantages to a distributed ledger technology. And so maybe I'd ask Jesse to talk a little bit about his background with distributed ledger and coming out of the Overstock family, and kind of where we got our leap into taking the magic black box and actually creating technology so that people can understand what their water rights are, what their water assets are, and how they can use them better.
Yeah, sure. So I worked at a company called WETx Ventures, and that was kind of the investment arm of Overstock.com. And Patrick Byrne saw the promise of blockchain and how it could literally change the world. And so our goal there at WETx Ventures was to find companies that were building interesting projects utilizing blockchain technology, and we would invest in them. So we were kind of like an incubator, though, as well. So we not only would invest in them, but we would help them to develop that software. So I was the director of software development and managed several teams that were working with these other companies to build out their software. So it was a wonderful opportunity to work there. I learned a lot about blockchain that I didn't know. I got to work on a project where we created our own blockchain called Ravencoin, and it's a fork of Bitcoin that was created specifically to manage and create other digital assets. So back before the NFT craze, we had envisioned how those digital assets could be managed on a public, immutable blockchain and visible to everyone. So that project really got me excited, and how we could utilize that project in helping to manage water. So that's currently a piece of our tech stack. We're using Ravencoin on the back end to tokenize water. But just working there just got me a lot of just insight into how blockchain could be used in different ways to solve problems, other than, like, when people hear blockchain, most everybody thinks of cryptocurrency. But that's just an aspect of blockchain, and there's lots of other solutions that can be built and provided utilizing that technology.
Yeah, it's definitely the flavor of the month, decade, year. Um, and there's lots of theories on what it could be used for, but this one seems like it should be at front of the line, right?
Yeah, we're really looking at applications of the technology. There's plenty of excitement around price action of different crypto assets. The goal that we have at WETx is taking the technology and making it applicable to, I'll call it physical world assets. Water being, as you said, maybe second to air is important. The concern from the very beginning, and our co-founder Eric Vogler has a legal background and a compliance background with money, and he actually also comes out of the same background as Jesse, who was an employee at Overstock and helping Medici. And so they were really important for me to bring the three of us together. The concern that I had was that if we take water and we back water with a crypto asset, that regulators might see that as money. So just like you have gold-backed money, you would have water-backed money. And the concern was, how do we navigate the waters of regulation that are still nascent to put ourselves in a position to say we're not money, we're not intending to be money, we're intending to create marketplaces where people can buy, sell, lease, get loans against their water, and do that in a way that distributed ledger facilitates better than traditional marketplaces, which historically have been paper or word of mouth. It's quite remarkable. As we started our company 3 years ago, we had this vision of creating marketplaces, which is kind of water exchange and transfer. That's the acronym WETx. The X is kind of the X factor, or the exponent of blockchain. And the idea was to go out and create marketplaces. And as we started talking to ranchers, farmers, municipalities, we saw that they were still working out of, somebody's pickup truck, a piece of paper that carried the value of the ranch. You come from a ranching background, you know that your land without water is not worth much. And as a lawyer, I've sat in a room with people who have sold off the water, or maybe the husband dies and the wife inherits the ranch, and somebody has sold off the water before she gets it, and she's left with almost nothing in value because the water's gone. And that water awareness and the water value is so important in much of the developing world as well as in the developed world. It was our goal to create a sharp pencil. There are policies of waste in the United States. In the Western United States, you get you have a use requirement. So when you have a use license from the state of Utah, for example, you have to put that water to work. And if you don't put that water to work, it can return or escheat, go back to the state. And so you have this responsibility to continually put it to work. Unfortunately, if you have intergenerational knowledge loss, grandson, granddaughter doesn't know that I've got to put this to work. Or I'm going to lose it.
Yeah.
And so without putting it to work and losing it, the value of the ranch is gone, because the water is really the true value. It's not the acreage. Doesn't mean the land has no value. It just means that it's worth less than if you have water and land. And so that was one of the main things that we started. Our vision was to help create mature digital marketplaces where people could buy, sell, lease, trade, get loans against their water, and increase and change behavior associated with water, both at a private property ownership perspective as well as government perspective. You see government working hard in a drought to try to understand what we have compared to what we're using. And it's remarkable to see how little information actually exists marrying the dry legal right with the actual use right through telemetry. And there are places in the world like Australia and South Africa that are more advanced, frankly, than the Western United States and the Colorado River Basin, which is an important water resource for us. So what we really started doing originally was to build water markets, and we ended up creating products along the way because we found that our customers, our clients, still had a lot of paper that they didn't know what it said. So I'll maybe ask Jesse if it's okay with you to describe a little bit of our product offering as it relates to just kind of digitizing water assets.
Sure. Yeah. So our WETx cloud contains a few different aspects of it, main features. The first is a dashboard. So as our customers log in, they are taken straight to the dashboard where they can easily see the state of their water and how much is being used, what the flow is coming out of the creek or the river, and just get a good picture of how their water is being managed and the state of it. The other aspect that we saw, like Tyler mentioned, was a lot of their information about the water was tucked away in a filing cabinet somewhere on paper that was from the early 1900s, mid 1900s, and they didn't have backup copies of that. So that was a huge need that a lot of our customers had to take that paper and digitize that as well. So one of our products and services is we provide those institutions the ability to, we come in on site and scan those documents, upload them to the WETx cloud, and that's the other aspect of our product. We call it the document vault. And all of those documents are uploaded there. They can organize them similar to the way they organize them in cabinets and folders. We provide that the same thought for them to make it an easy transition. And one of the nice things that we also do is each one of those documents is OCR'd, and so we have an index of every word that is in those documents, and they can do a full text search just like you can with Google, and find that word in any of the thousands of documents that they had previously only on paper. So those are the two that we have built and provided to our customers. And the next thing that we're tackling now is the inventory of their water and ensuring that what they have is tracked very well. And we create a digital twin of those water rights and water shares associated with the ones that they own and put those on the blockchain. And that allows us to open up markets. Once we have that digital twin, it's more easily tracked. Everyone knows who has what, and those things can be bought and sold or leased on a marketplace using the tokens that were created during the creation of that digital twin.
Very cool. So let's go back 10 years, and I just inherited a ranch, and you guys have a ranch next door. We're in the pickup truck. We've got plat maps and old records from the courthouse and maybe some old emails or something, and we're figuring it out, right? Fast forward, if we were WETx customers, this seems like it would be a lot easier.
Yeah. So in your description, we're all imagining two folks sitting, two people sitting in a pickup and trying to figure this out. If there's any level of disagreement, and there's often disagreement over land and water, people get their experts involved, lawyers, civil engineers, surveyors, and so on. And so those experts historically have been the gatekeepers for water transactions. If you, at the end of the day, determined that everything was fair and square with your neighbor, but you still needed a little bit more water, they're the most likely source for you to get more water. How are you going to do a transaction? Are you going to lease it from them? How long? Is it just so you can do an additional crop or have some more cattle for a certain season? And so all those decisions, the reality is that we need information about your water in order to make good decisions, and not just the water paper right, but how you've been using the water. And so there's in the need to move water forward, There needs to be a place where the telemetry, the information about the use of the water, can come and compare against what people are saying they're using. And as you mentioned earlier, somebody forgets to turn on or off, or intentionally turns on or off a head gate, which is the actual piece of physical equipment that allows water to run down a ditch. All that information is quickly becoming important to add telemetry to. And so you can see, not just in Utah, but also in the Intermountain West and the Western United States, and then Australia, South Africa, places like that are Israel. They're very water advanced. Telemetry and the use of actual water is becoming really important, so that we match up the actual use with the right to use it. And then the question on the table is, well, who determines who's using the water for what purpose? And our belief is that markets are the best way to make those policy decisions. It doesn't mean that there's not a place for government. We think that it's really important. We just have to have better information. And so you'll hear us oftentimes talking about a sharp pencil, which, as Jesse described, includes digitizing paper documents and then getting telemetry to match up with that, and having folks record their use of the water. So your ranch, you say, well, this is how many head of cattle I'm running, and this is how much water we're using. Getting that type of information out of intergenerational knowledge into the magic black box, into Jesse's great software, is a step that we need to take and are taking with our customers, with the goal of creating marketplaces where people can then say, you to your neighbor, hey, I need 50 acre feet to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to need it for 6 months. You could have that negotiation in the cab of your truck. However, we want it to be something that's on your phone, on the dashboard, so that you can just click a couple of buttons and that person can decide to accept that transaction, or maybe there's another neighbor who will pay $1 more, and those marketplace decisions will influence the use of water and increase the likelihood of better management for that water.
Yeah. And even if you live in a high-rise in downtown Salt Lake or Manhattan, if the agricultural folks and the ranchers are being better stewards of their water, which it sounds like through your technology they would be, it benefits everyone.
Yeah, so one of the cool policies that Utah has been pushing is what we call faucet first. Faucet first is the idea that water is a cyclical asset. So you can have human consumption first, faucet, and then that water can be reused for ag as reversed from current use, right? Water is a really unique asset, unlike oil, for example, unlike many other assets. It's a true cyclical asset. We have the same amount of water on Earth as we've had when we had 1 billion people 120 years ago. We have 8 billion today. What we believe is that marketplaces will change the way that we think about water as a cyclical asset, that tokenizing those assets and managing the water assets through tokenization and market behavior will encourage people to start thinking about, how can I get more use out of this water, stretch it further? So somebody is in a municipal area in a high rise and they're thinking, well, I don't even know where I got my water. It just comes out of the tap. The reality is that if we can help a farmer where the water originates in our world, our part of the world up in the mountains, maybe make a decision to make a capital infrastructure improvement, like, okay, I'm going to pipe an irrigation company. I'm going to pipe my water to a city first, let them use it, and then I'll take the reused water and pipe it back out to the agricultural use. Those are all infrastructure plays that could really stretch the water or reuse and recycle the water better. But we don't have good metrics on, is that a worthy investment, right?
Yeah.
And that's partially because we don't have marketplaces to evaluate. If I lease the water first to a city and then take it after it's been used by people and then clean it up enough to put it back out on an alfalfa field for my cattle, I'm going to make money twice. I'm going to charge the city for a lease, and then I'm going to actually grow alfalfa. And those type of decisions, we've identified at least 76 different water products that are used around the world in some form or fashion. just you look at silicon slopes and the slopes aspect of where we're at. Water, like I just described, in a faucet first mentality, you can actually get additional ski days out of water, right? So farmers leasing their water for snowmaking, and then they can take that same water and lease it to a city for human consumption, and take that same water and use it for cattle growing alfalfa, which is our primary agricultural export from Utah. There's actual loss of water through evaporation and consumption that we have to account for, but that gets back to that sharp pencil concept, right, of knowing who has the water, how they're using it, and how much loss through each of those turns in the pipe are actually degrading the total amount of water. When you look out in the western United States, you'll see evaporative ponds. So that's how we deal with a lot of our wastewater. And the question is before we let it evaporate, is there something else we could be doing with that, right? And 1970s to 1990s technology is to clean it up enough to put it back out on alfalfa, which, again, is a major consumptive use of the water. And so we just believe and are executing on a strategy of increasing awareness of the water by increasing its monetary value through marketplaces.
Yeah, I love it. The marketplaces are going to help dictate how things work, how they improve. And for that to happen, you guys need to be here and have your product and have all the data. Yeah, my head's spinning with all the applications and how it could be improved. And there's a lot of things that get improved that who cares, right? Doesn't move the needle that much. I only have to click 3 times instead of 4 times to send an email. Great. But this impacts everyone on planet Earth, and having folks like you think through it. So if I'm hearing you right, like if I want to transition my farm that was corn, which takes a lot of water, to cactuses and desert tortoises, I could, through WETx, lease or sell the water to my neighbor. I'm happy with my cactus farm. They're happy with having more water. I might make some money, tokenize it. It's all right there for you guys, right?
That's right. And you, through that example, came up with kind of the awesomeness of a marketplace, right? Somebody can stumble across something on YouTube. The Israelis are really innovative, for example, with water use. You have people in the desert in Israel growing coral that can be used for medical implants. And someone could go, look, I want to do that in my ranch out in the middle of Wyoming, right? And I don't need to use as much water to do that because I can recycle the water for the aquarium. So now what do I do with my excess water? Well, in the current state of affairs, the water, if it's not put to use, is lost, returns to the state. And so the value of that water is going to come down to what the water produces. And so your example of the cactus and tortoise farm, that sounds pretty cool. But you have a neighbor who's like, hey, I don't want to do that. I just want to farm more corn. And if I had more water, I'd farm more corn. So those are the innovations that we're intending to facilitate by market decisions associated with water. There are families in Australia who have stopped farming, and instead they lease their water to neighboring farmers, and that's their inheritance that they pass on to their next generation, right? So they've stopped farming. And because we're in a technology environment and most everybody listening loves Star Wars, question for you is, what was it that Luke and Uncle Owen and Aunt Prue were farming? They were moisture farmers, right? So the concept of water being important, right, is obvious. But then we start looking at technology and how we can take technology and improve the use of water. Can be very science fiction based. You think about getting from science fiction to science and getting places like Mars. I think it's probably 15 gallons a day that the current plan for Mars colonization requires, right? We use way more water per person per day in the United States, between 80 and 100 gallons. And so we can get a lot more efficient in our water use, and having water markets help us understand the value of the water is core to what WETx is doing.
Yeah, very cool. Well, we could go on for a while on this one. I'm sure there's lots of great stories and how you guys are building it and the applications of it. But thank you so much, Tyler, and thank you so much, Jesse, for joining the podcast and explaining what you guys are building and how it impacts everyone. It's very, very impressive.
Thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
interest.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.